Hi, folks. Welcome back to PhDemystified. This podcast is your roadmap showing the way forward for current and aspiring doctoral students.
Our goal is to shine some light on the unwritten rules and values of the Academy. We want to answer your questions and hopefully make your academic life a little bit more enjoyable. I'm Dr. Julianne Burgess, Adjunct Professor at Brock University.
And I am Dr. William Ankoma, Assistant Professor of Education at St. Francis Xavier University. We are diverse folks with diverse perspectives, and we're also recent grads. In this episode, which is episode 6, we're going to talk about ethical relationships and power dynamics in doctoral programs or studies.
So imagine this situation. You are a first-year doctoral student. You're invited to a networking event within your department. It's a wine and cheese party. And your supervisor is there along with other important professors who may be able to open doors for you. Your supervisor has told you this is a close-knit department. Everyone feels like family. So you arrive and the event is in full swing. There's alcohol, and you notice several people are tipsy. You also notice one or two of those key faculty members appear to be getting a little overly friendly, maybe a bit handsy with some of the students, specifically those who also appear to have consumed alcohol. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to grab a drink and start chatting up some of those big-name professors? William, what would you do?
This really sounds like a fantastic opportunity to get a chance to socialize and network with the big wigs of your program. And I'm so happy we had a chance to, socialize like this, attending meet and greet.
Sort of like this.
Meet and greets and picnics and what have you. These events are excellent for your mental health and your well-being, and you really need them. But we also know that some of these functions can sometimes turn ugly. I'm aware, and I think you are aware also, about sexual harassment and sexual assault across universities. With our own Brock University, when we were here, implicated in a sexual harassment case involving a faculty member and a student in 2014 that surfaced in a 2016 CBC News investigation.
More recently, there's a big story in McMaster where criminal charges were laid.
Right. So it's happening. Again, it's all because of alcohols getting involved and somebody not being professional enough.
Right.
So back to your question, what would I do in such a situation? I'm thinking probably I would first of all watch for my own personal safety. As a doctoral student, I don't have that much power as the faculty members involved. So I will tread cautiously. It's important that you read your program's handbook to know what are the ethical issues there, right? So probably you can follow the handbook to act here. But if you have not read it, what other professional, ethics do you know? What can you do? Because things must be done right, right?
And in this situation, you can see the scenario that we started with. Boundaries are getting blurred, lines getting crossed, and as a student, first-year student, you may really not be aware of how power dynamics are at play in these situations. So you're likely in no time you'll be on a first-name basis with your supervisor. And this gives the impression that you two are colleagues, equals, friends. You're working closely together. You've got projects, research, maybe writing, going to conferences where you're socializing. So what kind of relationship and what kind of socializing is appropriate and what is inappropriate?
Yeah, and those are, for me, they are excellent questions. And arguably, your supervisor may be the most important person you will have, and you will form a relationship with during your studies. But so many student supervisor issues, that are never formally discussed before you begin working with whoever your supervisor may be.
Right. And power and how power works in academic settings doesn't often get discussed or exposed. And that's what we want to do here today. That's what we want to talk about in this episode.
Right. So I will begin by explaining what ethical relationships, look like in doctoral studies. And these are just the interactions, and you're going to have many of them, interactions that you, the doctoral student, will have with other individuals, including your supervisor, committee members, amongst others. But these interactions, because we're talking about ethical relationships, the interactions are grounded in respect, fairness, and honesty. And also, there is the recognition of, dignity, your rights, and the humanness involved in these ethical relationships. Again, I want to highlight that there is dignity. Your rights are respected, and you're seen as a human being.
Right. So you may find, as I found, I had a great relationship with my supervisor. We were able to laugh together and joke. We would go out for lunch on occasion. You have the feeling that you're on an equal footing, but you can't forget that there is always a hierarchy at play, even when it doesn't feel like it. There are inherent power dynamics. Your supervisor is required to assess your progress in the program, and your supervisor has her own supervisor. So you need to keep all of this in mind. You and your supervisor are not equals at the end of the day. So thinking about a study by scholar Jenny Harding and her colleagues in 2022, I believe, they describe what they call relational ethics in the student-advisor relationship as powerful but unacknowledged forces for determining how smoothly and quickly students progress in their programs.
Yeah, and I want to add that, the core, the center of ethical relationships and interactions, always include respecting the perspectives and opinions, the feelings, and most importantly, the boundaries of each other. This should be transparent also, done in honesty, openness, and truthfulness. And there should be clarity about intentions, right? And the feelings and the agreements or disagreements we have. We're humans. Disagreements are there. But this should be done openly and in truthfulness and honesty.
Respectfully.
Yeah, and here's a big problem, Not all PhD programs have formal training for doctoral advising for our supervisors, including how to build healthy ethical relationships or how to build strong relationships with students across cultural differences. And, working with students who are not from the dominant culture adds another layer to the complexity to the student supervisor relationship. And, we think that the university bears the responsibility here to develop strong policies and practices to support advisors and doctoral students as they make the journey together.
So, the kinds of ethical issues that have been reported in the literature include, as we've spoken about, sexual harassment, racial and gender discrimination, the unfair distribution of opportunities or rewards, and questions about the ownership of intellectual property. In other words, some students have accused their supervisors of stealing their ideas. It sounds a little far-fetched, but it's not unheard of.
And it happens.
Yeah.
We're aware of some of these things. It happens.
Harding and her colleagues, in their study, administrators reported investigating an average of 6 to 10 unethical incidents per year. That's a lot. And this includes all kinds of things from rudeness, lack of responsiveness, poor guidance, to personality conflicts, all the way to sexual harassment, also failing students in their coursework and dissertations. But it's important to remember these are the breaches that were actually reported. So a lot of incidents don't come to light until after a student graduates. Why? For fear of reprisals.
Yes.
Or another factor is students just don't know how to report problems, where do you go, and who can you talk to safely and confidentially. These are big issues.
They're big issues, right? And so, that culture of silence, it's something that needs to be broken. You are in a doctoral program, you really thought about it. It's something you've planned. It's time involving and everything, and you want to be treated with respect.
Well, and another small detail is that this notion of who do you talk to when it's not clearly spelled out for you ahead of time, say in your handbook. The people who you're working with, your supervisor may be very good friends with another supervisor, someone else's supervisor. So it's very difficult to know who you can talk to safely when systems are not already in place for you.
Right. Yeah. So, relationships are key to your success in your studies. We cannot, belabor that point. Your future really depends, your success, right? Your future depends so much on the relationships you develop in your doctoral studies. Whether you start early or you wait till when you're about to complete before you start building these relationships, it's totally up to you. But we want to highlight in this podcast that relationships are key. So start now, all right? And sometimes, for example, your supervisor may ask you to do something you may not want to do. They may ask you to take on a particular project that takes you away from your own work. They may ask you to change your dissertation topic to something they are more interested in than you are. How do you navigate all these things?
This is challenging. So, yeah, you may find yourself in a situation where you feel that you want to stand up for yourself. You may want to say no to your supervisor. I don't want to do that. The timing is not good, or I'm not interested in that. But again, you may worry that there will be consequences for you because of the power that supervisors have over your studies, your path, and your future. You might be worried about things like retaliation, things that could affect you not only personally, but academically and professionally. So we want to explore these power dynamics in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, and as we move on to explore power dynamics, I just want to add that please feel free to say no if it doesn't work for you. There will be consequences. Some of us are still experiencing such consequences because we were able to say no. But at the end of the day, it's better to stand up for yourself rather than to please somebody and feel hurt.
Well, I know of a story of a young woman who was pushed off of her dissertation topic because her supervisor wanted her to do a dissertation that would be, in his words, marketable. She ended up not finishing because this was not her passion, this was not her
Right.
area of interest.
It's happening.
And so she needed to know how to say no.
It's happening, and that's why supervisors also have to understand that they're working with people who have their own passions and interests, and they need to be able to work with these students they accept to work with in the first place.
Right.
They are not imposed on them.
Okay. So back to power dynamics. How would you define that?
Yeah, so power dynamics, is just simply how power is distributed and used or exercised in a relationship, right? And as Michel Foucault says, everyone has power, whether you are the supervisor or the student. In fact, your little children, they all have power, but some have more of it, right? It's that relational give and take. Someone can actually take the power you have away from you. So when you are a doctoral student, you do have power, but obviously some have more than you, your supervisor and others, right? So whether you are a doctoral student or a candidate, I'm sure you already have noticed those with more power than you. And it's because of their position, right? And they, because of that position and the power they have that high degree of control over decisions that affect you. And so they can influence you so much. And unfortunately, sometimes they control you or can even exploit you. You need to be aware of all these things and see how best you can, minimize the negative impact of some of these things.
Right. So our advisors, their job is to be a gatekeeper. And as students, we may not even be aware that these gates exist, and they are there all along the path to our degree. And we may not see whether the gates have been opened to us or closed until, someone shows us, or until the gate shuts in your face. So, as the scholar Jenny Harding points out, it's the invisibility of those gates and our advisors' role as gatekeepers that create serious ethical concerns. So, gatekeeping serves a purpose. We're told it's to maintain standards and rigorous, high quality scholarship. But gatekeeping can also serve to marginalize some students, often diverse students, while providing benefits to others. It's your supervisor who has the power to either block or accelerate your progress and the opportunities that come your way.
And, whatever you said there, Dr. J, I hope listeners, you took notes. It's really, really important. At the end of the day, your advisors will decide which student, right, will be offered that juicy research assistant position, that scholarship, and all the opportunities out there. And there may also be the perception of favoritism. And, we can say that, oh, no one is being favored here, but we're humans. We know that favoritism is everywhere.
And Jenny Harding says that supervisors also come with something she calls the advisor card. This is a cultural capital card. Very successful or prominent scholars have extensive networks within their fields, and a student with a well-connected advisor will automatically receive a more powerful advisor card simply by having a prominent advisor. So, one that has the potential to open the gates to some amazing contacts and amazing opportunities for you. Other advisor cards won't open the same gates because they're just not as powerful. So I was able to see the power of my advisor card at the first conference I attended with my supervisor. So hearing the way that she was introduced and watching her present at this conference, standing next to other very well-known scholars in the field, wow, these were her peeps. That was a very impressive moment, very impressive to see her power in the field.
Right. And, the more one works in it as a faculty member, the more powerful they become over the years. So if you have an assistant professor or an associate professor or a full professor, the advisor card is definitely one has more than the other. Some may have lots of it, but by their nature, they don't give them out. So sometimes luck is there. Again, at some point in time, you really need to ask yourself whether you are benefiting from your supervisor's advisor card, as Harding and colleagues talk about. Regardless, we suggest and encourage you to be proactive. You really want to reach out and ask your advisor to give you opportunities if you think you don't have enough and you can do more.
Yes.
Also, if you have a good connection with another faculty member, maybe an instructor or someone you sit on committee with, reach out to them, because the opportunities will not just come and find you. They're there, ask, and you may find. But also, you need to be aware of the big egos. Okay.
Explain.
Yeah. You're working and learning from people who may be consumed by the number of publications they have and the many accomplishments they have achieved during their careers. And you're just a small portion of, what they care about. In such circumstances, my friends, you must learn to tread cautiously and stay positive regardless of how you are perceived by those mentors who are supposed to, be there and guide you along the way.
That's right. So let's ask the question, what can be done to promote ethical relationships between students and their advisors? So remember our definition of relational ethics. They are powerful but unacknowledged forces for determining how smoothly and quickly you will progress in your program. So we have a few recommendations. First, there is a need for transparency and accountability in PhD programs. We need to have courageous conversations, and they have to happen proactively before problems arise. So, found this very interesting. Some universities, such as Colorado, provide graduate school advising agreements, essentially a contract for the student and supervisor to sign after discussing the commitments and responsibilities of each party.
Yes, and then another suggestion or something that we want to point out is students are vulnerable.
Absolutely. This is true.
Yeah, although we're very powerful, we're vulnerable too, because we lack that power. We have some, as Michel Foucault says, we have, but someone has more, and they can easily take what you have from you because they have more. And also, we students lack that understanding of how systems work in the institution and how to challenge these same systems. Where do you go and who do you talk to when you have a problem? Sometimes all these things are hidden. You can't even find them, and then you suffer in silence. We don't want you to do that. Right. There is help out there. So we want you to know that you need safe spaces to discuss some of these ethical breaches. And these spaces must be easily accessible and promoted in the program. And if they are not there, if they are not in your handbook, your student's handbook, program handbook, ask.
Ask for that information to be there. Yes. Universities really need to step up and provide formal training for advisors stating best practices for mentoring. So Western University has developed guidebooks for mentoring, including mentoring across cultures. So these guidebooks are online, available on Western's website. Really good resources.
Beautiful, yeah. It's great to have some of these resources out there, right? And also, we want to add that universities, faculties, and the PhD programs themselves need clear policies, practices, and codes of conduct. For example, the McMaster Faculty Association recognizes the inherent power dynamics at play in student-faculty relationships, and they state that faculty are responsible in every case, again, in every case, to abide by university policies and codes of conduct, especially when in a position of authority, such as supervising graduate students and teaching assistants.
Bottom line, we need to recognize and acknowledge the presence of power in the academy. We need to understand who has it and who doesn't, the ways in which power is used in gatekeeping, and how it can be leveraged to marginalize some students and benefit others, and how power can be used to create possibilities for us on our doctoral journeys, or hinder our progress. I don't know about you, William, but I really like the idea of a contract for the advisor and student. I think it provides a framework for a healthy discussion around expectations, mutual responsibilities, and for those boundaries so that they don't get blurred. I think it sets the groundwork for an ethical and productive working relationship. And students need to know there are places and procedures for reporting problems and for serious ethical breaches.
Yeah, the contract, as you were talking, I have my own reservations about it, but I think that having a contract may be a good idea.
Having a framework of some kind for a discussion.
Framework, yeah, so it's something that probably doctoral students and their programs can begin to discuss those things, right? It really may be a good thing.
It's a healthy discussion to have.
Yeah. So as we are winding down, I want to say that, sometimes the student-supervisor relationship can also break down. Again, if you have a contract, maybe it's good. And some of these relationship breakdowns cannot be repaired. But it's also possible to change supervisors. So when it breaks down and you're moving on, it's okay to move on. But we also want to say that do not burn bridges.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small world, it's a small institution, you never know. The people you probably swear heaven and earth that you will never work with them again, you may find yourself sitting across each other. And so, yeah, you want to look at some of these things.
Right. You know, like in any family, power differentials are there and they're unavoidable. They will always exist. And we're imperfect human beings. There's always going to be the potential for lines to be blurred, for conflicts to arise, as you were saying. But with transparency and clear guidelines and structures to mediate power imbalances, we can create ethical, supportive, and productive relationships.
Right. And we also want to point it out that we are not naive. And we do know that where two or more people interact or meet, there is bound to be potential conflict or conflicts, actually. However, our hope in an ideal doctoral journey is for students to find themselves in environments where their success and well-being is prioritized and supported by the institutions.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that is it for us for this time. You've been listening to Demystified. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Julianne Burgess.
And I am Dr. William Ankoma. We would love to hear from you. Please email us at PhDemystified, all one word, @gmail.com. Thank you, and we'll chat again with you in 2 weeks.
Bye for now.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Demystified. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to stay updated on new releases. We love to hear from our listeners, so please reach out to us at PhDemystified@gmail.com if you'd like to get in touch. This podcast is hosted and produced by Julianne Burgess, PhD, and William Ankoma, PhD, in collaboration with Brock University's Makerspace Studio. Co-produced and edited by Serena Atella. Music is High on Loungin' by Wax Lyricist. This podcast is financially supported by St. Francis Xavier University.